All right, we're almost at 3 minutes past the hour. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Hi, everybody. My name is Eugene Turk, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Align. And I want to welcome you to our monthly coach webinar for April 2023. I hope that everyone is doing well, and thank you so much for joining us today. This morning, we are thrilled to have Matt Pruitt with a presentation on how to avoid hashtag marketing fails by building and leading a productive marketing team. For those of you who may not be familiar with Matt, he is a business advisor, marketing consultant, and the founder of 90 by 3 Growth Partners, located right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Matt has been designated as a professional certified marketer by the American Marketing Association, and over the course of his career has helped develop partnerships and strategies for over 175 brands, with revenues ranging from $1 million to $26 billion across many industries and categories. He led business growth for 2 Inc. Magazine 5000 fastest growing private companies. He scaled and exited his own company within 4 years and has been recognized twice as an Advertising Person of the Year by the American Advertising Federation here in New Orleans. We are honored to have Matt present for us this month. As always, just one administrative matter. We want this to be as educational and informational for all of you as possible. Please feel free to pose any questions that you may have using the chat feature, and we will be happy to direct those to Matt at the conclusion of the presentation. Matt is able to see the chat, and depending on the question, may actually respond in real time as well. Again, thank you all for attending this Align Coach webinar, and I will now turn the microphone over to Matt.
Eugene, thank you so much. What a wonderful intro, and what a wonderful day it is to be with all of you. I want to say very, very big thanks to Align and for their partnership and for allowing me to do this today. So getting started, I wanted to provide a little bit of background on how we ended up here and why I thought it was a good idea to talk about this topic. A little quick disclaimer. So I thought it would be interesting now that AI is kind of running the world to use AI generated images in my presentation. So you'll see some stuff that on these slides that are all unique. I just typed in, hey, I want you to create this, and the artificial intelligence tool developed this image. So I think this one is a young man solving business riddles. This is what it came up with. Not me, it's the machines. A little background on my story, how we ended up here. I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to speak to hundreds of business leaders throughout my career, most of them business owners. And a lot of those conversations revolved around the idea of growing business. How do we achieve growth? And it also revolved around this idea that the business leader has of, I have a marketing problem. I can't achieve growth because I have this marketing problem. And being the curious cat that I am, I always wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that and said, well, why? What is at the root of this marketing problem? And the things that I would hear were things like, well, we're just not attracting the right employees. Our customers are having a bad experience with our product or services. Our sales team is underperforming. We're not sure what our margins are. We just need to push more product out there. And so with all of this, I wanted to do more. So I challenged myself and I asked myself, I said, if I could change a business in 90 days, what would I do? How would I go about solving some of these big growth problems at the root? And that's where the idea of 90 by 3 came from. As really, I decided to put together a framework, provide the tool system and accountability to help business owners, business leaders overcome these challenges. And they're really built on these 3 Ps: purpose, which really has to do with you and your business's reason for existing beyond making money. Your promise is the value that you design and deliver to the world. And process, it's how do you produce outcomes with reliability? How does your business work without you? And really a key component to this framework working and all of my clients being able to stick to the promises and the goals that they've set is our partnership with Align. And Align and the software platform has really given my clients a way that they can stay focused on the things that are most important to them day to day. So enough of the infomercial. Let's dig into what we're going to be talking about today. Now, these things really come from a lot of the experiences, the most common things that I hear when I'm talking to a business leader about marketing problems. So first off, we're going to talk about how marketing is human. Sometimes when we have a very complex subject like marketing, we need to really break it down to its basics to understand it. Secondly, we're going to go through marketing and how it can be infused in all aspects of the business, not just in the marketing department itself. Third, and if you want my marketers who are on this call, please don't jump off the chat just yet. I'm going to explain this a little bit more, but marketing can cost too much, and we'll talk about how we avoid that. We're going to talk about how you can't keep marketing in the dark. Right? We really need to have an alignment of our marketing teams with our overall business strategy. And finally, what can we do as business leaders to empower our marketing teams and remove the obstacles to succeed with marketing? All right, so let's dig into the first topic. Here's another crazy image. I think this one I put in a primitive human evolving into a walking advertisement for dog food, and that's what it came up with. So, realize marketing is human. That's the first tip of the day. And to do this, we kind of have to go and look back, way, way back. And the DNA of any two people on Earth is 99% identical. And so as Mr. Rogers would say, we're all very special people. However, even though we're very special, we are all very, very similar in our behaviors and our motivations as a species. So to understand marketing, it's really important that we understand that it's not really a new thing. This is something that's been going on for a very, very long time. So let's go back. I'm going to give you the history of the world in the most basic form, right? We were sustenance communities. We relied on ourselves. But then one day somebody woke up and said, hey, I can farm. I can produce a surplus of wheat. And then the village down the road said, hey, we're really good at this domesticating animals thing. We're going to start raising livestock. And then we have marketing. One guy from one village talks to another person in another village, and they say, hey, I have a surplus of this. You have that thing that I need. Let's trade. And so then it leads to what we call this division of labor, right? As trade expands, as these communities grow, you now have specialists that form. You need people to make tools. You need people who can cook the food. And then all of a sudden you have markets, right? Where these communities, we have all of these specialists, and your new generation of specialists, maybe they don't know how to farm like their ancestors did. So they need to find a way that they can sell their products, get them into a place. So we have farmers markets. We have areas where people get together to trade and sell goods, sell and buy goods. Well, as civilizations grow, we have a lot of people. We need markets every day. So in towns, we now have streets full of retail. We have shops. And with shops, you have the evolution of people who say, you know what? I can move something from this town to another town. I can now be kind of a wholesaler. I don't actually have to produce this stuff myself. I can pay people to make it. I can transport it. I can move it to another place, and I can make some margin in between there. And so that was great, right? Things are moving, a lot of wars in between, but this whole concept of sharing value, buying and selling has been going on for a very long time. Well, we get to this place, right, in history where it becomes very hard. We need to distribute things faster. And humans got together and they said, we need to have a revolution. Why don't we make it an industrial revolution, right? So let's invent things. Let's invent steam engines and technology, and let's figure out ways that we can produce lots and lots of stuff. So for the first time ever, we have huge surpluses because production is fast and cheap. It puts more money into people's pockets. They don't not only can afford the things that they need, they now can afford things that are considered luxury or things that they don't necessarily need to live. And then everybody who's making all these things, they figured out, hey, we've got all these great communications channels, radio and newspapers, and this great thing called a telephone, and we can get our stuff directly in the hands of the consumers. And now we have where we are now today in this kind of this modern era of marketing, where you as a brand, you as a company can really communicate directly with the consumer in many, many different ways. So why am I sharing all this with you? Well, to understand that marketing has taken place over hundreds and hundreds of years, even though the term marketing has only been around for the last 100, 150 years. We have to think about what happens at different points in time and how it's really the psychology behind marketing is infused in our DNA. We all buy and we all want and we all need things, and our brains are kind of programmed to do that. So you look at concepts such as scarcity. We want what we can't have, or reciprocity. Where you feel obligated after someone has done something good for you, you want to give something back. You have the concept of curiosity, right? I'm making all these tools. How do I get them into the hands of other people? Our brains are naturally wired to try to fill in missing information gaps. You have the concept of loss aversion, right? Studies have shown that humans are more likely to avoid loss of something than to gain pleasure or to gain something out of a transaction. We have the concept of self-interest, right? Humans are very selfish people at our core. If you subscribe to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's many, many things that we have to satisfy before we get to kind of this self-actualization or something of higher thinking. And then we have law of least effort, right? The less choices, the less work, the more routine, the easier it is for our brains to process things, the more likely we are going to choose something. You could call this the paradox of choice. You're more likely to choose something with less choices than something that has many, many more. Even the problems that we think today are modern problems are not modern at all. You go back hundreds and hundreds of years. This is the first one-star review, right? 1750 BC in Mesopotamia. One fella says, hey, you told me you're going to give me fine quality copper ingots, but then you left and you didn't do what you promised me. And this guy was so mad, he took the time to write all this out on a clay tablet and send it to this other person. We go back to even before Gutenberg and the printing press in China. This gentleman produced this bronze stamp and was stamping everything with their advertisement that says, hey, we buy these high quality steel rods, we make fine quality needles, be ready for use at home in no time. Also in the middle of this is a logo. It's a rabbit. And essentially the text says, hey, when you come to town, look for the rabbit and you'll find us. And for my B2B folks who dread going to trade shows every year, they work, right? They've been around for hundreds of years. The 13th century, Champagne, France had the Champagne fairs where merchants would come to do business with other merchants. So if we really think about marketing at its basic core, it's about understanding humans and understanding that while it is very, very complex today, we can break it down into a basic form. So how do we do that? Well, on one side, you have producers. On the other side, you have consumers. And then in the middle, you have an exchange process, which is where marketing operates, right? This exchange is where the consumer has to give up something valuable for something else that you want to have. The major difference between hundreds of years ago and today is that back then you may have had a couple of these channels that are active, right? I can walk over to this person in a farmer's market and sell to them directly. And a lot of you business leaders are still doing that, right? We still have direct selling. Are you still getting business through referrals, right? That's something that can be controlled. But through time, as channels started to expand and communications expand, we now have a lot more channels to deal with. And consumers, especially today, based on all of the digitization of communication and how we can go about this exchange process, we end up in what I call the gray area. And this is what I see a lot of business leaders struggle with, is because it's more and more challenging to understand where your buyers are going to come from at any point in time. And a lot of it has to do with buyers' needs are really varying depending on time and context now. And the buying process is rarely linear. And there's not really this archetypical customer that we can think of anymore. So another thing that I think really contributes to this gray area or lack of understanding in marketing is marketing itself. Marketers have over-marketed marketing. And sorry, Heidi Cohen, for using you as an example here, but when we have 72 marketing definitions, that means that we really can't even agree on the true definition of marketing. And that becomes very confusing for business leaders because we're trying to understand the complexities without breaking it down to the basics. The other thing that has caused this gray area is really technology and speed, right? So, hundreds of years to go through these innovations, but then you look at the last 50 to 60 years, and we have extreme innovation in how we deliver our goods and services to consumer every decade almost. We go from mass production to really understanding, hey, we can research our customers really well. We can kind of figure out how they go about buying things. And then with the invention of IT and computers, we now have all of this advanced technology that gives us the ability to evaluate our customers over a long period of time, over an entire life cycle. And with all this data, we can make more informed decisions. Just think about all of the new marketing terms that have popped up over the last 20 years. I mean, we have social media marketing and loyalty marketing and search engine marketing, inbound, influencer, guerrilla marketing. All of those things can help to kind of create this gray area. And then finally, most marketing, I say most, is learned by doing. It's really a big ask of us on educational institutions to keep up with all of the rapid changes, right? In business schools, if you go through business schools, it teaches some marketing. But for the most part, we as business leaders, we're exposed to marketing in certain ways. We see marketing, we experience it, we pay for it. And so we're all learning about how to do marketing in very particular ways. There hasn't been a real strong standardization. So what can we do about it as business leaders? How do we kind of clear up the gray area and all of these challenges? Well, my approach that I like to take is just to stop this, right? And say, look, if we just say this out loud, that we're all wrong and we're going to be all right, we can force ourselves, again, to go back to the basics and say, okay, who are our consumers? Who are we trying to sell to? How are they thinking about buying? And what are the channels? What's the exchange process looks like? If you break it down to very simple facts like that, it can really help you understand, number one, how to start to avoid a lot of these marketing problems and to clear up that gray area. This leads us into the second point. You can't keep marketing only in the marketing department. Now, I love this quote by Peter Drucker, who is considered, the father of modern business management. He said, marketing is the whole business seen from the customer's point of view. And if you really think about it, most other key areas of our business, finances, IT, production, operations, HR, they all take place behind kind of this internal curtain. So marketing, since it is so directly connected with the consumer, with the end buyer, that's how they actually experience the business. And so one of the ways that you can start to solve some of these marketing problems is by thinking about how does your organization center around the customer, right? A customer-centric approach. McKinsey and Company has done multiple studies, but one of which said that 70% of the buying experience is based on how the customer feels they are being treated. And so each interaction with all of these different buying channels, customers are forming and reforming their opinions of trust, of perceived value, of the willingness to do business with the brand. So if you take a customer-centric approach, you really have to think about how do we invest in our customers long-term, and outside of just a sales transaction? How does our organization overall take an approach to serving our customer and creating value for them? And then finally, it forces us to really think about each experience and interaction that a customer is having. Yes, there are many, many different channels. However, there are a lot of people involved outside of marketing, right, to get that product made and delivered to that final consumer. And so if we think about all of those different interactions, we can then start to take steps to clearing up that gray area and solving some of these big marketing channels. And the proof is in the pudding. This is a study done by Ascend that really looked at B2B marketing and sales professionals. And they asked them, they said, okay, what benefits are you getting from having this really centralized, personalized look at your marketing strategy? And 49% increased customer retention. We have improved customer experience. We have improved and increased engagement. We have increased revenue. So if you look at the companies that are taking more of a customer-centric approach, you are seeing those same companies winning market share and improving things. Now, I wanted to take a minute to show a great case study of a company called WestJet. They're an airliner in Canada. So if you have any friends in Canada, you're probably very familiar with them. But I just want you to look at this video and think about how WestJet puts their customers at the center of their business.
It was a night before Christmas, and all across the land, the good folks of WestJet had a miracle plan. On the eve before flying, the guests were in their beds. Visions of traveling danced in their heads. While out on the runway, something secret had arrived. It was left in the lounge. It was a Christmas surprise. There. Is that Cohen? What are you looking for Christmas this year, Cohen? A choo-choo train? A classic. Do you like Thomas? What would Mommy and Daddy like for Christmas?
Big TV.
Yeah, big TV.
A big TV. You're looking fabulous.
Oh, I need to.
It's okay if you just want to stare at me as well.
What I need is new socks and underwear.
An Android tablet.
Is that William beside you? And Cameron?
Some Santa boots.
Stop and stop.
While the guests told their Christmas wishes to good old Saint Nick, WestJetters took notes and got ready to shop quick. It was a great rush with the 2 flights in the air to get all those presents, not room to spare.
That's WestJet. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of your flight.
But was everything ready? We all had to wait for the moment of truth at Carousel 8. The guests never expected what they'd asked of Saint Nick would actually appear. It was all quite a trick. A WestJetter would say it was more than mere fun. Miracles do happen when we all work as one. We'll give Santa the last word on this most special night.
Christmas to all, and to all, a good flight. Ho, ho, ho!
Very hard, very, very hard not to get teared up every time I watch that. How many of you guys thought that that was just a really good marketing campaign? It's a lot more than that, right? Think of all of the people that were involved in making that happen. The coordination across many, many different departments, as well as just everyone's willingness to pitch in and to be aligned with values and the mission of the business itself, which is centered around the customer. The other really cool thing that happened in the following year after this, WestJet experienced a record numbers across the board, right? Number of passengers, record net earnings. They achieved a $100 million cost reduction goal. They had the best on-time flight performance in 7 years. They won Best Employer Award. They had over 60,000 hours of charitable time donated from their employees. Lots of flights donated. Absolutely, Eugene, I love that. Yes, people will always choose to fly here in the future because this brand is built on customer service, right? And you see that when a brand or an organization really takes the time to focus in on these things, performance follows, a return on investment follows. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that in a lot of organizations. You know, since 2011, the American Marketing Association, Deloitte, as well as Duke University, they've been doing a study called the CMO survey, or Chief Marketing Officer survey. And they've been asking marketers to review a list of activities and indicate whether marketing leads or owns these activities, and whether other departments within the company, leads or owns them. And what we see is marketing is still heavily involved in the things that are very customer facing, social media, right? Marketing research, marketing analytics, but they're not necessarily involved very heavily in things that really matter to customers and really can create value with customers, such as revenue growth, new products, innovation, sales, customer service, distribution. So if marketers have these deep insights into customer behaviors, it should give them significant influence into other parts of the company. But we're still asking, what does marketing actually do, and why does it cost so much? Well, that's something that I want to clear up right here. If you want to avoid marketing fails, you have to prioritize your marketing budget. So one of the things that we can think about is, what we experience, and why does an organization, or why are you hesitating as a business leader not to invest in marketing? Well, this is what we see, right? We see these ads. We've all experienced cold calls or spam emails. We've all been annoyed by repetitive radio jingles. So we have this natural aversion to advertising. In this digital age, right? Advertisers, through regulation, now expressly have to say, hey, this is an ad that I'm showing you. So from the outside looking in, advertising looks expensive. It looks time consuming, and some would say maybe wasteful, right? But you go all the way back to 1960, and Jerome McCarthy, who is one of the most prominent authors in marketing education and teachers in marketing education, he wrote in Basic Marketing and Managerial Approach, he posed this question in 1960 because consumers and businesses were asking it then, does marketing cost too much? Well, I think to answer that, we have to say, yes, it can cost too much, but only if the consumer or your buyer is ignored in business planning. Sticking with McCarthy, he invented something, or I guess helped to explain how marketing should function. And if you've taken any marketing classes, you've seen this. It's called the marketing mix. It's around these 4 Ps. And essentially what it means is that these are the different elements of a marketing plan and how you execute marketing. And a unique combination of these things, product, place, price, promotion, it leads your business to differentiation, and helps you to split apart from your competition, and any change in one can have an effect on the other. But what I want to point out, and that could be a whole nother webinar on just this piece, but what I want to point out is in relation to feeling marketing costs, we can look at these 4 Ps and we can kind of find those things. We can find either inefficient use of marketing dollars, or a reason why maybe you're spending more than you should. If you look in the product side of things, right? If you develop something without significant input from your customers, maybe you developed it for ease or for increasing your profits, or maybe a preference, and you just turn it over to your sales and marketing team and say, hey, just sell this thing, you're typically going to have increased cost and promotion. Distribution or place, if you have a bad selection of trade channels, or you don't recognize the changes that are happening in the markets or how your customers are preferring to buy, well, that usually connects to an increase in promotion costs because you're having to work a little bit harder to sell these things. Price is another thing too, right? If marketing isn't involved in helping you price your products and services, you could ignore customer demand. You could attempt to get big margins without really considering volume, or you could spend a lot of more money on promotion when the customers aren't feeling like they're getting enough value for what they're paying. And promotion can be many, many different things, right? You could have not measuring the effectiveness of promotion that will help to drive up costs. Another thing that I think we all need to think about is inputs and outputs as it relates to giving resources to marketing. We have to realize inputs are easy to measure, right? Things like number of emails sent, number of leads generated. Those things are really easy to measure, but marketing also has influence on outputs, which are much more challenging to measure, such as how much is the price of the customer is willing to pay? How much value is added to the buying process through marketing? And then what's overall customer satisfaction? I mean, we have a lot of technology today that kind of helps us with these things, but usually when you think marketing is very costly, it's because we're struggling with trying to measure the outputs of it. And then finally, it's not always on us as leaders, but we really need to do a better job of helping marketers understand our business model. Every business has very specific ways that they get their products and services to the customers. And so if you're not training your marketing team to understand all of the costs that are going into delivering that service, then you can have waste within there because marketing just is operating in this area of unknown. So if we think about all of this in terms of the objective of marketing is really to satisfy consumers' needs. And we've given marketing and marketers the resources and input that they need to increase the effectiveness of this exchange process. Then marketing can add a significant value, which has a direct ROI on the business. It helps to satisfy that question of, is marketing, does it cost too much? Why are we spending so much? When they have that kind of clear line of sight, you can see the return on investment. So how do we align all of this? Naturally, if you want to measure that ROI, we really need to have that line of sight straight through the business. And how do we do this? Well, Scott Todaro, Peter Mahoney, Dan Faulkner, they wrote this really great digital book called The Next CMO, A Guide to Operational Marketing Excellence. And in that book, they said, look, there's only really 3 top-line marketing objectives that marketing can have. And everything, all of these different activities can kind of fit up within that, right? Sales, maintaining or expanding the business. Awareness is getting the word out. Perception has to do with the brand, positioning, messaging. And so in an ideal world, our alignment of goals to the business goals needs to look like this. Business goals at the top. You have those 3 marketing objectives or a mix of those with a KPI, a key performance indicator, to measure how do we know we're accomplishing this. Then under that, we have sales and marketing strategy, which is how do we accomplish these objectives. And then under that, we have all of the execution pieces, the tactical pieces that we're all used to seeing, the advertising campaign, the messaging, the emails. Those campaigns and programs, which have their own individual metrics, live kind of underneath all of that. So you can see a very clear reporting up to the top method. Unfortunately, this is what I see a majority of organizations doing. You have your business goals, but then there is no real marketing objectives. And instead of sales and marketing strategy, we have sales ideas and marketing ideas, which is this very poorly defined strategy. So it ends up having either no measurement or maybe no timeline, no connection to the business goals. And so it pushes down to ineffective execution of campaigns and programs, which we live in an explosion of data, so all of these metrics that our campaigns, our social media campaigns are doing, like social media engagement as a metric, as an example, those things are getting reported up to the C-suite. And we're trying very hard to connect social media engagement to overall business goals. So marketing and metrics and business KPIs are now fighting against each other instead of flowing in a way that that these initiatives are connected to achieving kind of an overall goal. I spoke about the explosion of data. We live in this time where we have just such a prevalent amount of data and common is the collection of this data. That business leaders expect marketers to know how to interpret it. There are over 7,000 different marketing channels out there. And so the complexity that goes along with that, we really need to, I guess, probably pump the brakes a little bit on our marketing teams and say, hey, there are all these great tools, but let's think about the ones that are going to be the most effective, the ones that can help us make the best decisions with the data, instead of just expecting tons and tons of data to be shared. It's very overwhelming. And we also need to be a little bit more patient about maintaining kind of a long-term strategy, a long-term perspective. The other thing that we can do is we can stop ignoring the value of brand building. We talked about inputs and outputs a little bit. This is really more of that output. Provoke Insights did an online survey and a study that showed that consumers are really, they're saying quality and trust, how much these things relate to the brand are influencing whether or not they do business with that brand. Quality even more so than price. And so if we stop ignoring the value of the outputs of doing marketing and doing it consistently, then we can start to see that things like brand building can really help a marketplace favor your company. It can help increase revenues and profits because customers are choosing you over competitors, and a lot of times at higher price points because they have a higher perceived value. And you are really impacting the future of your ability to sell because you've built up more goodwill and greater awareness, right? Think of WestJet and what they've done in the business and to their audience after they have really focused on building this brand of customer service. So how do we make all of this happen? Well, the last tip is we really need to focus on removing the obstacles from your team. So after our team is aligned, our job is really, we got to set them up for success. So one of the ways that we can do this is we really need to recognize that there is differences in marketing strengths. All of these things you see on the screen right now, strategic, creative, general, tactical, practical, technical, these are all components of doing good marketing execution. However, what we as business leaders tend to do is start to kind of blur the lines between these and think that one person has all of these strengths and can do all of these things. But in reality, what you tend to see is someone who has a very strategic mind and thinks very practically, right? They can do the activities to achieve big goals, and they have the ability to get along in different contexts. Or you see someone who's creative, right? They come up with new ideas and they can execute those ideas, or they can manage those people in a tactical way. So you have all of this kind of crisscrossing of things, general, right? Theoretical versus technical and analytical. We need to start thinking about, if we have people with certain strengths, how do we support them? If you have strategic people, you need tactical people. If you have creative people, you need to have practical people. The other thing that we need to recognize is there is a very big need for skill development, and not just one time, but in ongoing skill development in the marketing function. We talked about data. How do we continue to educate our marketing teams and help them with capturing, understanding, and using that data? How do we communicate and gauge brand building efforts within the organization? How do we promote more cross-functional team collaboration between all of the different departments? And then with the tools and technologies, how do we make sure those things get adopted and are used and evaluated on an ongoing basis? Also, we can ask our marketers directly, and that's what I did before this webinar. I reached out to 25 marketers from all walks of life in different industries, different geographies. And I asked them this question. I said, what is the most common way a business leader prevents or hinders marketing from doing its job? And so if you want to know exactly how you can support your team, check this out. So overwhelmingly, 76% of those people who responded said, listen, we feel that the business leaders, the people we report up to, they don't trust us. They don't trust our team, and they tend to micromanage us. 48% said, we feel like our leaders are lacking a general understanding of marketing, right? Going back to the gray area, we got to think more on the basics and less on the complex. 40% said business leaders aren't doing a good job communicating their goals and expectations, and we don't feel like they're allocating enough resources and investment. And then 24% said they're ignoring metrics or overthinking or being a little bit too careful, going back into that idea of trust. So in closing, there's three things that you can ask yourself today that I think will start to get you in the right frame of mind on how you avoid these common problems in marketing that you see time and time again. First question is, number one, are we listening to our human customers? How are we collecting information on their wants and needs? What are we promising them? Do we know why they buy from us? Are we overcomplicating it? How can we simplify this? Secondly, are we truly aligned? Are we aligned with our customers? How do we utilize all of our team members in the value exchange process and communications? How can we get marketing more involved in other aspects of the business? And then finally, how can we as business leaders empower our marketing team? Where's our allocation of resources? Can your marketing team clearly show a connection of their activities to the overall business goals or the direction that you're heading? And then are you fostering knowledge sharing and ongoing education for that marketing team? To kind of continue to help you guys, if you don't know where to start, in closing, one of the things that I'm going to be sending out to everyone, and Eugene and Haley over at Align are going to be sending this, I think, in the follow-up email. But what I've built for you guys is a marketing plan map. So this is a free resource that if you don't necessarily know where to start, or you just need to get a good handle on how to better align your business goals with the overall marketing strategy, this is a tool that you can use. And so I know they're going to be sending that out to you, but I think we're about to go into a little bit of a Q&A here. But if you guys have any other questions or want to talk further about any of these topics that we've talked about today, please feel free to reach out to me. I have my email there, or you can book a meeting with me directly through the Calendly link right there.
Thank you, Matt. That was awesome. Really, really great presentation. Again, if you have questions for Matt, please post them in the chat. The first thing that popped into my mind during your presentation, particularly during the WestJet portion of it, is a reference to a book called The Power of Moments by the Heath brothers. And I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but it's all about how do we elevate the sort of mundane parts of our customers' experience so that it elevates it into something that is completely unforgettable. And that's a perfect example of how do we take just a general holiday flight, which most people, I think, dread, and turn it into something that they will never forget, that their children will tell stories about. And it's a really fabulous book. It has to do with customer experience. It has to do with marketing, sort of that complete package that if anybody wants to learn more about that type of customer experience and building brand loyalty through that exercise, the book again is called The Power of Moments by the Heath brothers. And I think either one or both of them are professors at Stanford. The question that I had coming out of this is, one of the things you mentioned is that marketing is expensive, or can be expensive. So for smaller companies, obviously, who don't have big marketing budgets or don't have large marketing teams, they're limited in human resources, financial resources. What do you think is the most important thing to invest in terms of a small budget that you have in trying to get the most out of your marketing spend? I know that's a very vague question, and obviously every business will be different, but just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's the common answer, right? Everyone's special, everyone's different. So you got to take a special approach. But I think really going back to your channels, right? If you don't have a very large budget, really focus in on the few channels where you know your customers live or they're going to be communicating through. That's where you should spend your efforts. If you don't have money for doing 15, 20 different things, but maybe you have money or time to do 3 things, focus on doing those 3 things really well. Social media, for example, is a tool that you can use to directly communicate with your customers. Now, there are different channels, right? If you're more B2B focused, you might want to use a LinkedIn versus a Facebook. However, there's the ability to speak directly, to communicate your value proposition right then and there through a channel that's free, and your customers are there.
Awesome. In the informal survey that you did of marketers, you noted that the second highest category was with leaders don't understand marketing. So I'm just wondering, what tools, what resources could you recommend, to the extent there might be some leaders who don't feel very strong in the marketing department? What can they do to sort of increase their knowledge base or their understanding of marketing?
That's a fantastic question, and I may have to think on that one a little bit, Eugene. There are a lot of really good books and materials that are out there. I may just get a reference, a little book list going, and maybe we can send that out in the follow-up email. They're just like this. There are lots of webinars that are out there right now with different marketers who are sharing information about just the basics. So I would say, go back to those foundational things that can help you understand your customers. And if you can understand your customers, you should be able to understand marketing. We don't have to get very complex into all of the strategies. That's what we need to trust our team for, right? We saw that as kind of the highest thing on the survey. They don't trust us. Sometimes you just need to have the right people in the right seats and then get out of the way, right?
Right. Then you also talked about sort of the different strengths that your marketing teams may have. They're strategic, they're creative, they're tactical. If I'm a marketing person, if I'm a leader, are there certain personality tests or strength finders or assessments that we can do to sort of better understand what the actual strengths of our marketing team and our human resources are?
Yeah, there certainly are. I mean, DISC, which we're all familiar with, is helpful in that. The Kolbe A exam is another one that's really good in helping to understand intrinsic strengths. I think it's, I don't know, $45-50 to take this, kind of 1-hour exam where you go through and you're answering questions that help you really understand how someone deals with energy. You have a limited amount of energy every day. And if you are stronger in one particular way, you have a strategic mind and you don't like to be very much in the details of things, it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to do those things, but it just means you're probably going to expend a lot more energy in the very detailed, minute things. And so I would recommend Kolbe A as one of those exams that you could take, not necessarily personality, but more, again, focusing on what are your natural strengths, the natural ways that you do things. And that can help to provide some clarity within your team if you don't already have a feeling of where they might fit.
One of the numbers that kind of struck me during your presentation, I think you almost said it kind of in passing, that there's about 7,000 different marketing channels that exist today. Obviously, marketing is constantly evolving. You gave a great historical sort of summary of where marketing started from just a few channels in a marketplace to what we have now. Are there particular resources that you would recommend to people to constantly look at in order to sort of stay up to date with the most current trends in marketing?
There's so much. I think, again, it really just depends on what industry and what you're looking for. I always go back and just, again, with kind of this marketing plan map and the idea of alignment is, I think that innovation and marketing go hand in hand. And so if you don't have a system or a way of evaluating new technology and new ideas on an ongoing basis as it relates to all of these different marketing tools, you could get overwhelmed or confused or not adopt things very, very good. So I would say, if you have a very clear objective, go out and research the tools that might help you reach that objective. Don't research just all the tools that fill up your inbox every day. That'll be a waste of time, but focus on those things that may help you accomplish those overall goals on a week-to-week, a quarterly basis, an annual basis.
Sounds great. All right, we are almost to the top of the hour. If anybody has any last-minute questions, please post them now. Otherwise, I will go ahead and thank everybody for attending today's Coach webinar, and a big thank you to Matt for a really great presentation. Obviously, you can learn more about Matt by finding him on LinkedIn, going to his website, 90x3.com. The very interesting things going. Well, great. Nice to see that we had people from Germany. Fantastic. As always, we encourage you to use Align. Thank you, Matt, for the shout out during your presentation to help you sort of align your marketing efforts with your business goals. If you need any assistance or more information on how to use Align to do that, please don't hesitate to call your advisor or simply email us at support@aligntoday.com. Thank you again. We hope that you will join us for our next Coach webinar in May. Until then, we hope that you have a great day. And thanks, Matt, for a great presentation.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.